America, don't be hypocrites. You have heard the N-word. The term nigger is part of the American culture. To some, the word means man.
What's up, my nigga?
To some, it is a form of derision.
Those niggas better not be moving into my neighborhood.
Right. To others, the term nigger was a term of affection.
Domino.
Domino, nigga, please. To others, it is simply tradition.
My grandpappy called them niggers. My pappy called them niggers. So I just calls them niggers too.
Some people say that our nation needs to have a dialogue, a conversation about race. Well, here's our opportunity to discuss, to talk with each other openly and honestly about race and about those other terms that we pretend that we don't use, like wop, kike, spick, raghead, slant, gook, redskin. Yes, redskin. Let's seize the moment. Join me. Let's talk and get past race. Get to all of us being Americans. Tall and short Americans, fat and skinny Americans, black, brown, red, yellow, and green Americans. One nation, united under God.
Well, welcome everyone to the 2015 SBA SULC Lecture Series Committee. I am very excited to have our speaker today. We have Senator Elbert Lee Guillory. My name is Jamar Myers Montgomery, and I'm the SULC SBA Lecture Series Committee Chair. Along, we also have Ms. Venice Morgan, Ms. Kimyada Howard, Ms. Lindsay Linder, and Ms. Morgan is going to come up and actually introduce our speaker. So look forward to enjoying this, and Ms. Morgan.
Hi there, everyone. My name is Venice Morgan, and I'm very honored to introduce our speaker today. Senator Elbert Guillory was born and reared in Opelousas, Louisiana, and graduated from J.S. Clark High School. For some time, he attended Southern University and A&M College until he became active in the civil rights movement during the late 1950s. After Guillory's time at Southern, he joined the U.S. Navy during the Vietnam War. While in the Navy, he finished college and was accepted into several of the nation's Ivy League's law schools. After finally settling on Rutgers Law School of Law, he obtained his Juris Doctorate and subsequently became a Rutgers Law professor. At a very early age, Senator Guillory evidenced a special talent for policy and advocacy and began working for the state governments of New Jersey and Pennsylvania shortly after graduating law school. At age 29, he ran his first state agency in Maryland. He was also chosen to run cabinet-level agencies for Illinois and Seattle, Washington. In his mature years, Guillory spent 43 years as a criminal defense attorney and served in the Louisiana House of Representatives. Today, he continues to serve his constituents as he currently holds a seat in the Louisiana State Senate, District 24, and looks forward to continuing his pursuit of public service. Ladies and gentlemen, today I am honored and privileged to introduce to you a two-time Legislator of the Year award winner and Louisiana Hall of Famer, Senator Elbert Guillory. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It is very good to be here with you. Give you a little bit of information about my background. how I became an expert on race, of all things. It started when I was 15. I went to a public library in St. Landry Parish and got arrested because I was trespassing in a place where black kids could not, black adults either, could not go to get books. From that arrest until today, my life has been pretty much a straight line of fighting for fairness and justice and equality. After that, had a couple of demonstrations at my high school, and then at 16, I came here to Southern University. At 17, I became the, I'm told, all-time youngest editor-in-chief of the newspaper, the Digest. And at 18, I was expelled for writing things that were illegal. I wrote things like, America, if I fight your wars and pay your taxes, I'm not going to walk around the back door of the courthouse. So I also called one of the United States senators from Louisiana, a very powerful man, a lunatic in very large letters in that newspaper. I was escorted from the campus by a very large gentleman with a very large double-barrel shotgun. Left, joined the Navy, finished college and night school while I was in the Navy. Thought I was going to play football at Rutgers. I was a 5'9", 230-pound linebacker in the military, playing military ball. And the coach at Rutgers he was very pleased to have me coming there. Well, law school dean said, law school is not a time for frivolity. And he was right. I didn't understand. That first year of law school, as you know, was full. And there was no time for football. But anyway, while I was at Rutgers, we studied race. We studied the socioeconomic impacts of race and racism and discrimination. And I'd like to give you 3 words. If anyone has any question about my penmanship, I was a pre-med student. In any analysis of race, these are the 3 words that we must contend with. Now, race is just a condition. It's just like being skinny or being tall or being short. You get assigned because you were born somewhere with certain physical characteristics. You get assigned a race on this earth. Very few people, I've seen people do some gender changes and other kinds of changes, but very few people are successful in doing racial changes. So it's a condition, and it's a condition that one basically lives with. Now, keep in mind that people have some attitudes about our conditions. Some people don't like round faces. Some people don't like narrow faces. Some people don't like short people. Some people don't like tall people. Some people would go on and on. But it is a condition about which little can be done. It becomes a problem when it moves over here to racism. That's somebody's attitude about a condition. When I was a little boy, Mom used to say, sticks and stones will break your bones, and names will never hurt you. People's attitudes about someone else's condition, that gets to be serious, but it's not really a big problem. If you don't like me because I'm black, that's just okay. There's nothing wrong with that. As long as you don't move it to discrimination. The third leg, the third word that we contend with today. When discrimination comes in, that's when it all becomes a problem. Race becomes a problem and racism becomes a problem only at the point of discrimination. Discrimination is when some act is so off the chain that the law has to step in and say, no, you can't do this anymore. You gotta stop doing this. It is discriminatory. It is violating the rights of someone. Race, racism, and discrimination. There's a couple of other words. Action and distraction. Now, if you have identified some discrimination, some acts that are discriminatory, and you decide that you want to do something about it, the next step, of course, is to move down to action and distraction. And being in this room is a special pleasure and a special honor. Because in this room, you have the talents, the energies to do something about all discrimination or some specific discrimination. And I hope that during this point in your legal careers, I do hope that you will choose to do something about it. If you do, then you move down to deciding what action you will take, what type of action you will take. When I was at your stage in my career, we created the term affirmative action at Rutgers, where I was a student and later taught administrative law. As a matter of fact, we are a footnote. If you take a look at the 1972 civil rights case, Griggs versus Duke Power, we're a footnote in there. I would put that on my tombstone if anybody understood it other than lawyers and law students and judges. But since no one does, I'm not going to bother to put it. But if you look at it, you'll see that we at Rutgers we created the term, we coined the phrase affirmative action. And then we went around teaching state agencies how to draft legislation and how to get it passed, and then how to execute that legislation, how to enforce civil rights laws using affirmative action. Now, when we created affirmative action, we knew two things. First, it would make a major impact on America. Second, the day after it went into effect, folks would attempt to shoot it down. So it was a temporary solution. And we just had to maximize that solution while it was in effect. It is pretty much dead now, pretty much. Certainly in its original appearance, but it had a major impact on America. Very positive impact. Richard Nixon was the president in 1972, and Richard Nixon really breathed life into affirmative action. With his executive orders, he made sure that there were minority set-asides, female set-asides in workforces, in contracting, and he created many, many millionaires. Richard Nixon, my favorite president. Richard Nixon and his, when he was vice president, Dwight Eisenhower was his president. In the 50s, they sent the federal marshals and federal troops to the South to protect those of us who were in the streets. Those were some interesting times. Still have scars, police baton here, dog bite. It's the last time a police dog was ever able to catch me. I learned how to run after that encounter. Seriously, when I was playing football, I ran a 40 in 4.37. That's just 2 steps behind lightning. But it's 3 steps ahead of the police dog. So, let's talk about action and distraction. This is the real nitty-gritty of what this is all about. It's distraction. If you want to do something about something, there are a lot of distractions that will come your way. There are people who are hired, people who make their living off distracting us from accomplishing goals. I'll give you a couple of examples. There was a big humbara about the Confederate flag, you may recall. And a lot of flags came down from a lot of places, and they were taking off some license plates. And I believe that that was a distraction because it did not address a single real problem. After all of the issue about Confederate flags, not one worker was employed. Not one more child got an education, prepared for today's jobs or tomorrow's jobs. No Confederate piece of cloth impacted on the fact that the primary cause of death for young black men in the black community is other young black men. None of those things changed. None of those things were addressed. It was a distraction, I believe. Same thing, you saw a clip a few minutes ago, a video. I posted a video of President Lyndon Johnson, 1964. And what he said was, and these are his words, well, I had to give them a little something. Not enough to make a difference, just enough to keep them quiet. I'll have those niggas voting for Democrats for the next 200 years. That's what the President of the United States said right at the time that he was signing the 1964 Civil Rights Act. So, I posted a video with the President's words and him saying what he had to say. People heard that I was getting ready to post a video with the N-word in it. They assumed that I would be using the N-word and be saying something about somebody. They didn't see it. They didn't hear it. They didn't talk to anyone who had seen or heard it. But still, a couple of people rushed to the microphones and thoroughly condemned. Now the issue was, what did the President of the United States mean? What was the impact of his whole set of actions in 64. What was he trying to do and what was he predicting? That was the issue. Complete distraction away from the issue. Complete distraction away from the conversation and the president's words by people like old man Kip Holden, who shot from the hip without having any idea of what he was talking about. What he said was, you shouldn't be surprised at what comes out of that man's mouth. It's out of my mouth. Nothing came out of my mouth. It came out of the president's mouth. But just the inflammatory, anger-engendering term. And that's what you will see when you look at distractions. People get emotional and angry about something that's really not a major issue, like the N-word. Distraction. Yes, I just had to check my notes. I want to make sure that I cover every little aspect of this and not wander from my focus. So, my friends, since you are here and here in this law school, I would urge you to do something about discrimination. Obviously, you're not going to be able to do anything about race without some major DNA kinds of things, and we're in the wrong part of the university that have to do that in the biology section. About racism, it is highly unlikely that you will be able to reach into the hearts of people and change their attitudes toward tall people or short people or fat people or skinny people or brown people or yellow people or red people or white people. And it's not really important to change attitudes. It is important to change actions. That is discrimination. So if you decide you're going to do something, I urge you to take some action and beware of the distractions that will be thrown in your path. Just keep your focus. Now, may I answer the questions that you have? Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned that President Lyndon B. Johnson, who was a Democrat at the time in '64, had said those remarks directed toward the African American race and getting them to vote Democrat, which is a good premise. However, the Republican Party, on the other hand, although it was originally the party of the Freedom Party, if you will, before the 1950s, since then has been very aggressive and hostile toward the African American community and toward other communities in America as well. So with that in mind, what kind of thoughts do you have for us law students that either vote Democrat or vote Republican, as far as who we would want to, so how do you justify supporting the Republican Party when they have been so hostile within these past 50, 60 years?
Actually, the Republican Party has not been hostile to black rights and to civil rights, to human rights. If you look at the votes on the 1964 and 1965 Civil Rights Acts, you will find that 90% of Republicans voted for both of those, while a much, much smaller group of Democrats supported those concepts. Remember now, this was the 1960s that we're talking about, and across the South, Democrats were giving us hell. I told you about those scars. Those are Democrat scars on my body. Bull Connor was a Democrat. The governors of Arkansas and Mississippi and Alabama, Louisiana, were all Democrats who were creating the problems for us. And as I mentioned briefly, it was Dwight Eisenhower, Republican president, and Richard Nixon, who really tried to save some of our skin. It was Richard Nixon and Martin Luther King who worked on drafting the first modern civil rights act, which was in the 1950s. The Democrats shot that down. It didn't even get off the ground. What we should do is the same thing that every other group does. Jews, Hispanics, every group. They don't put all their eggs in one basket. We are the only people who vote 95% or 98% for one party or for one candidate. Everyone else hedges their bets. They don't put all their eggs in one basket. When that basket falls, we are left out. No one else gets left out that way. So choosing one side over the other, what's important is that we have a plan for longevity in the political arena and for long-term success in the political arena. And that does mean not putting all of our eggs in one basket. Yes, sir.
What makes you a Republican, or why do you classify yourself as a Republican?
Values. The values of Opelousas, the values of the two churches that I was brought up in. Mom was a teetotal Baptist, Dad was a Catholic. And I spent a lot of time on Sundays because I had to go to Mass with Dad, come back home, go to church with Mom. I spent a lot of time in churches. So the values of those churches are much closer to the values of the Republican Party than the Democrat Party. I am pro-gun. I am pro-God. I am pro-life. And all of that is just much more in line with the values of my community. Now, for further illumination, I would urge you to take a look at my video, which is on YouTube, which is entitled, Why I Am a Republican. I made a little video when I made the switch, along with about 60 other Louisiana legislators. They were all white, I was the only black one. Not one, they didn't get one drop of ink in the newspapers about making the switch. Very quiet. I was on the front page of all the newspapers. You would have thought that I'd tried to rape the Statue of Liberty or something. So I did do a little video to explain. Yes, ma'am.
So the modern day Republican Party, they're active trying to disenfranchise black people.
I haven't seen that. When you say trying to disenfranchise, I take it that you mean requiring IDs to vote. What else?
They require IDs to vote. They move on district lines. What they've done several things since they gained control of different legislatures across the nation.
They're overwhelmingly in support of felony disenfranchisement, which, as you know, in this country, huge population of incarcerated individuals in the country are black males.
Changing. You can watch for it. By the time that the next presidential election will be held, that position is completely changed.
Okay, but for right now, I'm speaking about the conservative Republican views. So you have both the increased support of felony disenfranchisement. You have the refusal of the Republican-controlled Congress to reauthorize Section 4 of the Civil Rights Voting Act. Because the whole reason the Supreme Court said, as you know, that the metrics were out of date, using 1965 metrics. Well, we have mountains and mountains of data showing systemic voter suppression in minority and impoverished community populations. And we have a Republican-controlled Congress. All Congress has to do is to apply modern-day metrics to reauthorize Section 4 of the Civil Rights Voting Act, so that states that have hundreds of years' history of suppressing minority votes have to clear it with someone before they can go ahead and change their voting.
If you are going to work on that, if that is going to be one of the issues that you will work on, I will work side by side with you on that.
Excellent, 'cause I'm actually working on a petition right now.
May I join you?
I would love that. And as your point, you said racism isn't in and of itself a problem. It becomes a problem when it comes to discrimination. I disagree with you because I believe that racism is a set of attitudes that justify a certain section of your citizenry's treatment towards their more browner citizens. So if in a study, Pew Charitable Trust just came out with a study showing about the 3 strike rule for felons. And when they interviewed people, white Americans, and explained the 3 strikes rule, then they then showed pictures of 100 incarcerated people. In the instances where 80% of those pictures were brown faces, people, white Americans, were overwhelmingly in support of the 3 strike rule. When they switched it and they put 70% of the pictures to be white faces, they were all of a sudden against it, and that it was unconscionable. And it's this type of racism, this type of attitude that allows for society's acceptance of systemic oppression towards its minority and impoverished people.
Let's cut to the chase. You used oppression.
Yes.
You used treatment. Those are acts that are discriminatory. So let's attack those acts.
If society isn't okay with that, if the majority of your oppressed people or the top tier of the current power structure, your white males, if that applies to white males, we've seen time and time again that something's happening overwhelmingly to that population. Society doesn't stand for it. If there's a mass shooting at a school in Connecticut where everyone is white, it's a national uproar. It's a big people are proposing legislation like this. Yet we have in Chicago where you have more people dying a year than were dying during the Iraq conflict. And the only person that appeared to do anything really about it is the president, which is my brother's keeper initiative. But then when there's quote unquote black on black violence crime, which is a fallacy, because over 85% of violent crime against a person of a certain race is of that same race. So there's white on white, black on black. It's just who you're around. So whenever that happens, black people, black on black crime, and nobody's doing anything about it. People do this, and they ignore initiatives like my brother's keeper, and they ignore initiatives from the community. It's just very selective at the attitudes of the people. So while those aren't necessarily acts, they're just attitudes towards what certain people are doing. It's that attitude that allows for that pervasive oppression to continue unchecked.
Without a question. And that is why it is the centerpiece of this triumvirate. But it is the discriminatory act. It is the act of oppression. It is the act of disqualifying voters that are discriminatory. We cannot change people's attitudes, but we can change people's behavior. Now, part of the negative attitudes towards black males is something that you and I, we have let the black male become America's #1 enemy. If you look at, if you look at movies, television, videos.
We don't control the media. The majority of the media is owned by powerful.
We let it happen. You and I let it happen.
We really didn't, though. If you look the movements of your black males coming out of the AA church, coming out of institutions like Howard and Morehouse, those have been the movements that have pulled this country towards a more equitable existence. We were the ones who made the Civil War about slavery. We were the ones who went with a strategic plan to try to establish that the 14th Amendment applies to individuals.
Okay, but we're talking about today.
Now by a white Supreme Court.
We're talking about attitudes in America today, and the fact that today black males are looked upon by the majority of Americans with disfavor.
Those views were not introduced by the black community. Just like you say, the N-word. That word was not introduced to the American vernacular by us. Violence on the black body, black on black crime, that was not introduced in this country by us. Those are things that are holdovers, things that were given.
If you do not acknowledge that much of the hip-hop lifestyle frightens Americans, and if you do not acknowledge that much of incarceration and who is incarcerated frightens Americans, if you don't acknowledge that, then you're not dealing with the attitudes the very attitudes that you're talking about.
To that point, I would say that, first of all, you need to look at which hip-hop culture, but even giving you this, right? Fredo Santana from Chicago. Fredo Santana didn't start using violent rap lyrics and then Chicago became violent. Okay? There was a causation that caused a reflection. Hip-hop culture is a reflection of what's going on in that community. Simply because these gentlemen are standing up going, I could die any day kind of attitude, want to be 25 and alive, I don't care about anything. That's a reflection of the systemic systems that are put on them, and they just merely reflect that. That's not.
Yes. Absolutely agreed.
For them, it's foolish. You got the Eagles, that is what he's standing. Then you got people who Kendrick Lamar's the soul of hip hop, the consciousness of hip hop. Can't get any recognition at all. So America is not fit hip hop. America uses hip hop to its advantage against who make hip hop like it's literally like a part of our culture. It's outlet, it's culture. It's more than and establishing fear, but again, it's selective.
I understand that. My brother pointed out in a study that people reacted negatively to brown photographs in a particular situation to non-brown photographs, and that is what I am addressing. We have let the black male become America's #1 enemy. In movies, in videos, that's a reality. That's a reality. And if we don't acknowledge that reality and do something about that reality, those attitudes will continue.
Senator Guillory, one second. We're going to take 2 more questions from Ms. Linder and Mr. Chambers, and then we're going to close out.
Finally coming on board with this crime versus tough on crime nationally, but we've kind of being mass incarceration capital of the world, right? We are kind of slow to those reforms compared to similar states like Texas, which we have really incredible things in terms of criminal justice. So yeah, I just would like to hear your perspective on our Republican itself and how we see criminal justice moving forward in this state.
Doing 2 things: changing the incarceration system itself. Before '07, if someone was incarcerated, they went in, watched TV, worked out, and came out the same way that they went in. What we did in the Louisiana legislature was we changed the approach to incarceration so that people now have an opportunity to get a high school diploma, a GED if they prefer. They also have an opportunity to get a certified trade. And we will take them during the last year of incarceration to work while they're still incarcerated. We take them to work in the morning, pick them up, bring them home in the evening, so that when they leave, they have a certification, they have a year of experience on a job, and they have that job. And if they want to stay in that area, they continue working there. And if they want to go back home, they still have that experience, and They've been paying their child support and other obligations. So that's been a major, major thing. The second thing that we've been doing is changing the sentencing guidelines. Marijuana, for example, now is very, very low possibilities of incarceration for possession and use of marijuana, even though it is not decriminalized. It's been, the criminalization has been lessened significantly. Absolutely. Not only in favor of, been a major part of. I was admitted to the Louisiana Justice Hall of Fame for drafting and passing legislation that we've been talking about.
Well, you're a Democrat or a Republican? You're a Democrat at the time or Republican?
The first time, the first major piece of legislation I passed as a Democrat, the last piece during this, last two pieces during this past session, a Republican.
I just want to find it. So, I'm not a law student, I was a business here. So I want to give you a say. Several things puzzle me. Number one, you talk about the flag being a distraction. It's always been a distraction. It's always been a symbol that talks historically about the Republican Party being on the side of that. Now the Republican Party stands in support of a symbol of hatred for African people. And so now that Democrats and Black people want the symbol of hatred taken down as a sign of progress, you support now the party that supports the oppression of Black people today, not yesterday. So why should Black people vote for you as we take it up?
First, let me say that the Republican Party does not support and has not taken a position on this flag one way or the other. One man.
You support him, Lindsey Graham?
I don't support, I support one politician, that's Elbert Guillory. I got enough baggage on my shoulders to take care of. I don't have to deal with somebody else's words and attitudes. But I agree with you that it is a symbol of, to many, many people, of hatred and a symbol of oppression. Changing it has not addressed one real issue.
But you did not change, you did not remove the symbol the same way Nazi Germany removed the swastika and does not allow that to be out there in Germany. We still allow the symbol of hatred and racism when we say that our nation is moving forward, and Black people are reminded every day of what our ancestors had over.
The first thing that we have to deal with, the most important thing that we must deal with, is actions that prevent us from achieving the American dream. If I can become all that I can be in America, despite somebody's attitudes toward me, it's a distraction. So the attitude is a distraction. It is.
Thank you. In the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and close it out.
Yes, sir.
Would you mind? Okay.
No.
All right. Well, thank you. Very spirited discussion. We want to thank Senator Elbert Lee Guillory. We have something for you, so stay right here. But these are the kind of talks that we want to bring to the school. Talks that are thought-provoking, controversial, but are relevant issues of today. The vision of the lecture series committee is to bring dynamic speakers on issues that are relevant and practical. So once again, I want to thank Senator Elbert Lee Guillory for his participation, and I want to thank everyone for coming out to come hear this talk. So, Senator Guillory will come out here. Certificate of Appreciation in grateful recognition of your continuing service and support, the Lecture Series Committee hereby presents Senator Elbert Lee Guillory with this Certificate of Appreciation for your participation in the 2015 SULC Student Bar Association Lecture Series. Thank you, everyone. Yeah.
I'll be right here if anyone wants to chat.